I know that you left the company some 10 years ago or so, but just tell us, first of all, because, people get caught up often talking about the incident itself and the investigation, and we forget the 5 people who have lost their lives. Just tell us a little bit about Stockton Rush.
Yeah, I first met Stockton in 2008, and we co-founded the company in August 2009. He immediately struck me as probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. He was a very talented aerospace engineer, and he was a passionate explorer. He was really committed to exploring the oceans and expanding humanity's understanding of the world's oceans, specifically with an intent of helping to conserve the oceans. On top of that, he was extremely committed to safety. He was also extremely diligent about managing risks and was very keenly aware of the dangers of operating in a deep ocean environment. So that's one of the main reasons I agreed to go into business with him in 2009.
And I'm interested that you talk about that commitment to safety, because I want you to respond to that comment by James Cameron that it was too experimental and people were concerned about what Titan was doing. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, I know one of the things that Mr. Cameron said, which is also very correct, is that the deep ocean exploration community is extremely small. There aren't that many of us in the world that do this work. We all know each other. I think in general, we all respect each other. But as you would expect in this kind of community, there are completely different opinions and views about how to do things, how to design submersibles, how to engineer them, how to build them, how to operate in the dives. But one thing that's true of me and every other expert who's been talking is none of us were involved in the design, engineering, building, or testing, or even diving of the subs. So it's impossible for anyone to really speculate from the outside. I was involved in the early phases of the overall development program during our predecessor subs to Titan. And I know from firsthand experience that we were extremely committed to safety, and safety and risk mitigation was a key part of the company culture.
It's very difficult for normal people who aren't immersed in that world to really understand how unforgiving that environment is on the ocean floor. Just try and give us a sense of all of the challenges. If you're to go down in a submersible, what the challenges are.
Yeah, there's the obvious ones that have to do with life support, because people that have been swimming know that you can't breathe underwater. But by far the most unforgiving element of that environment is the pressure. At the surface of the water, we're exposed to 1 atmosphere of pressure, which is basically the weight of the atmosphere weighing on top of you. But as you go down, every 33 feet adds another atmosphere of pressure. So you can imagine, even already at just 100 feet, you're already experiencing 3 times the pressure of being on the surface. So you can only imagine how much pressure you reach when you hit the bottom of the ocean, where the Titanic is at over 12,000 feet.
I mean, if any comfort can be taken for the families and friends of those involved, is that it looks, from what the US Coast Guard said yesterday, that this was a catastrophic implosion that happened very, very quickly.
Yeah, and that's something that even I think Mr. Cameron said before he took his own sub to the bottom of the Marianas Trench about 10 years ago, is that I think he was asked about the similar risk. And he said, look, if something happens at that depth, it will be catastrophic in a matter of microseconds, to the point where the implosion happens at almost supersonic speeds. And you'd basically be dead before your brain could even process that anything was wrong.
Mm. What are your thoughts on what may have happened? Clearly, there's an investigation which is ongoing, but having been a co-founder of this company, and as you say, rightly say, worked on it in the early stages, because I know that you left 10 years ago, what are your thoughts on what might have gone wrong?
Again, it's too early to tell. There's data that's going to have to be collected over the coming days, weeks, and months. And I'm sure the team will work with whoever's conducting the investigations to cooperate and provide as much information as possible. And at that point, we'll be in a better position to tell.
Is there much regulation at the moment of submersibles and people's ability to go down and dive around the wreck of the Titanic?
Yeah, there are regulations in place, but as you can imagine, there aren't that many subs that go that deep, and so the regulations are pretty sparse, and many of them are antiquated or they're designed for specific instances. So it's kind of tricky to navigate those regulatory schemes.
Mm. There has also, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, in the last few days, been a discussion about whether these kind of trips should even take place at all, whether it is appropriate after all. So many people died on the Titanic. It is essentially a mass graveyard, and some people feel that it's not a place for tourists or explorers to go to. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that'd also be a great question for Mr. Cameron, because as you pointed out, he's been down there 30 times. And I think he would, not to put words in his mouth, but I think he'd probably say the same thing that I would or that Stockton would, is the intent of all of these missions is not to conduct joyrides down to this wreck. Everyone who goes down there has extreme reverence for the wreck as a gravesite. And if anything, everyone who goes down there is going there to preserve the memories and to document the gravesite itself.
I don't know if you can even answer this, but are there many other places like this around the world where submersibles go so deep, or is it just the draw of the Titanic?
Well, the ocean is a massive, massive environment. Stockton and I used to commiserate about the fact that as explorers, it provides a fertile ground for exploration, because you could drop a sub almost anywhere in the ocean and you'd almost be assured of being the first humans ever to set eyes on it. The Titanic itself has a kind of a mystical kind of draw to it because of the reverence with which everyone has viewed that wreck over the last century since it sank.
And finally, I mean, you've mentioned that this is a very small community of people who go down to these depths and explore around the Titanic wreck. How much of a loss is this, and indeed a setback, is this for the technology?
Well, I think that's also something that Mr. Cameron talked about, which I think even Stockton would agree with, which is one of the risks that the community takes every time it operates is that if there is some sort of catastrophic failure, the general public will backlash against the entire community and basically say that it shouldn't occur. But just like with space exploration, the best way to preserve the memories and the legacies of these 5 explorers is to conduct an investigation, find out what went wrong, take lessons learned, and then move forward.
Guillermo, thank you so much for speaking to us today, and I'm really sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I appreciate it.